Thank you for joining me. This is the Spiritual Princess. To quickly summarize this case, in August of '89, Jose and Kitty Menendez were shot and killed in their Beverly Hills home by their sons, Erik and Lyle Menendez. The brothers initially claimed they acted in self-defense after enduring years of abuse by their father. However, the prosecution argued the killings were motivated by financial gain. The first trials in '93 ended in a hung jury, but in '96, both brothers were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Recently, new evidence and a renewed understanding of sexual abuse have led to calls for their resentencing, potentially making them eligible for parole. It's a case that continues to spark debate and has been revisited in various true crime documentaries and series. And I sat with my guides and I wanted to know what they could tell me. You know, being a psychic medium, I can do that. And so that's what this video is going to be about. I do need to preface, this information that is shared in the video comes from a higher source, and it reflects their insights. It's not my personal opinion. It's what they're telling me from the other side. And I do have to warn about viewer discretion. I use a couple of crime scene photos later in the video. So if that content, and graphic images disturbs you, please just proceed with caution. Those don't happen until 12 minutes into the video, and I do warn a little bit before. So I just had to kind of preface with that. The first thing my guide said was that these boys were horribly abused by their father, and that he was not a good person at all. They say the abuse started while the boys were very young, and the abuse was sexual, but besides that, their dad, Jose, did really cruel things to torture them. He would hurt them physically because Jose believed it would make them tough, and that's what he was taught by his father. So this was a cycle of abuse that he learned from his dad. Their mother, Mary, who went by the nickname Kitty, she couldn't do much because she was also abused by Jose. So she didn't dare speak up to him. Jose was a maniac at times, and it really scared all of them. I guess he had threatened Kitty and he would kill all of them if she ever left him. He threatened this many, many times, so she was afraid even after she knew about the abuse toward the boys. She didn't know to what extent this abuse was, but my guide said she wondered why Jose would lock the doors. She thought he was punishing them by making them tough, but now knows in death what he was really doing. I asked my guides if the mother, Kitty, ever sexually abused the boys. My guides said no, although on one occasion when one of the boys was young and he crawled into bed with the parents, that the dad made him touch his mom inappropriately, and she got extremely angry about it. Jose was mentally abusive to her as well as the boys, and the boys saw that and they would feel bad for her, but they couldn't help her because Jose would take it out on them if they tried to intervene. So everybody was scared of Jose. If he wasn't torturing one of them, he took his anger out on the animals. That's why there's a story out there about Jose cutting one of the dogs' heads off and putting it in the freezer. My guide said it was a punishment, and it was meant to send a message to all of them that this is what happens to you if you disobey me. The mom was so miserable and tried to be the perfect wife, but he was never happy. with her. He cheated on her. Kitty was scared that he would kill them, but she would try to figure out ways that she could leave him. My guide said she planned on leaving her marriage after the boys went off to college because she figured if they were gone, Jose would take out all of his anger solely on her, and that really scared her. So the next question I had was, what was the turning point and maybe root cause of the murders? And my guide said that Lyle, the older one, he was 21, is the one who confronted his dad and told him that what he had done to them their entire life was wrong, and if it didn't stop, he was going to turn him into the police. Lyle thought that would scare Jose to stop the sexual abuse, but Jose went crazy and dared him to turn him in. My guides say that's when the dad started to threaten to kill them and played vile mind games so they never knew when or where he would try to kill them. Kitty had no idea Jose was doing this, but it really scared the boys, especially since he tortured them for years and he killed the dog by cutting its head off. The boys thought Jose was nuts and believed he would find a way to silence them from going to the police. They just didn't know what to do or who they could trust. My guide said that Erik cried out for help in a lot of ways. He was only 18. I think he wrote a play in school about killing his parents, and he had written a letter to his cousin Andy about the abuse that he had talked to him about before. So as Erik cried out in these ways, nobody did anything, and Lyle standing up to Jose only caused a battle between them, which made Jose go off the deep end. That's what started the mental torture, since he could no longer physically torture them. That's why they felt they needed protection and went and purchased guns in case the parents tried to hurt them. They really had no idea if or when Jose would do anything. He would give the boys wicked smirks and say, "Watch your back today," according to my guides. He said a lot of things like that to keep them mentally afraid. And again, their mom did not know any of this was happening. He would do it behind her back or when she wasn't around. Another part of Jose's mind games was when he suddenly started treating Kitty nicely and trying to get her closer to him. In case the boys did do anything to get him arrested, Jose figured he would need her support, so he purposely treated her nice in front of the boys as a way of getting at them, because that wasn't his character. He was usually mentally or verbally abusive, and even probably physically. So his game was letting the boys see that him and Kitty were close, and that Jose would tell the boys that she trusted him and she was on his side, not the boys. And Kitty was also mentally abused as much as they were, but really she didn't have any idea this was happening. So my next question for my guides was, why didn't she take the boys and leave? And they told me that she was afraid to stick up for the boys because Jose would abuse her for it. He told her that she made them sissies and she babied them too much. Jose wanted them to be mean boys, tough boys. And he was brought up to believe physical torture was what made you tough. In reality, it only damaged their mental state more and more. My guide said Kitty was pretty suicidal for years, but didn't want to leave the boys alone with Jose. For many months, Jose made the boys think that the parents would murder them and make it look like an accident. He told them they were out of the will and that he wasn't going to pay for their college. Jose knew he could control them with money, and he figured if they did go to the police, he was going to make sure they weren't going to get a dime. That's the only way to hurt them if anything happened. So he purposely had an attorney come to the house to change the will, and he made sure he did it in front of one of the boys to send a message. My guide said the message was, "See what I can do to you? I'm in control, not you." My guide said that Erik and Lyle had enough of the mind games at this point and decided it was either going to be the death of them or his parents, because Jose had been saying he was going to kill them when they least expected it. So they decided they were going to have to do it first. They had to get Jose when he couldn't fight back, which is why they waited until they were sleeping. Jose had told the boys that he had weapons hidden all around the house. So I asked my guides why they ended up shooting their mom. I understand going after their dad, but my guide said it was because they believed she was on Jose's side, because he made it seem that way for a long time as part of the mind games. That's why the boys were skeptical about things that she would cook. They always wondered if she was going to poison them. She didn't know Jose was scaring the boys to that point of fearing for their lives. I asked my guides if the mother knew about the sexual abuse, and they told me that she was not aware of the sexual abuse and assumed Jose was torturing them to make them tough, because that's what he would tell her after abusing them in a locked bedroom. My guides say, had she known everything going on, she would have taken them and fled for safety, even as scared of Jose as she was. They reminded me that Kitty planned to leave her husband once the boys went off to college. She did not know about Jose's cutting them off or changing his will. She would never have allowed that to happen. My guide said the boys did have tempers at times because that's what they saw from their dad. They thought it was okay to yell and disrespect their mom along with other people. They saw how powerful he was. He made a lot of money, so they grew up thinking this is how you behave. This is how you treat people to get ahead in life. Jose drilled that into their heads from a very early age. My guide said, remember, they witnessed Jose abusing their mother from the time they were toddlers. So these kids were turned into monsters by their dad. The amount of mental and physical abuse is horrific for anyone to endure, but especially children from a very early age. So the next question I asked was, what did the parents think about when the boys came in shooting at them? My guide said the mom was very confused as to why the boys were shooting at them, but Jose knew. After they killed their parents, the boys knew they had to make it look like his dad had enemies. They figured that his dad made a lot of people angry, so that was an easy thing to say at the time. My next question was, I asked, why did the boys go on this crazy spending spree after the murders? My guide said the reason they went out and spent so much money was because they knew Jose took them out of the will, and they wanted to be sure they could get some things before anybody discovered what was in his will. They were going to need money for college, to live on, which is why they bought the Rolexes and expensive cars and whatever else. But my guide said they planned on selling these items later on. Remember, these were young boys who didn't really know how to handle what they had just done. My guides say it really messed up Erik, and he couldn't live with the guilt, which is why he thought he could confide in a therapist, which blew up in their face because this therapist was also out for himself, and he thought he could get something out of this. I also asked my guides why they separated the boys in prison. My guide said the boys were separated because they didn't want them to feel like they could depend on one another, as prison was meant to be a punishment. But it was a cruel punishment to separate them like that. My guides say these boys needed a lot of help, not a lot of cruel punishment, as they went through that at home, where you are supposed to feel loved and safe. My next and most important question, I think, was asking my guides if the boys regretted killing their parents. My guide said yes and no. They wished they would have turned their father in for the sexual abuse, but he made them think differently because they were just kids. They know now, after growing up in prison, what they did was not how to handle things, but they can't turn back the clock or they would. They view what they did as self-defense because they believe their dad was going to kill them and collect life insurance. Jose drilled that into their heads, so they believed he would do it. This is a sad situation, but Erik and Lyle made that choice to murder their parents, and they have paid for it dearly. When you abuse kids the way Jose did, he created murderers. That's why when they shot him, he knew why. It still shocked him, my guide said, but he knew deep down why they did it. He knew he had hurt them their entire lives up to that point. I also asked my guides if their mother Kitty had anything to say about what happened. They told me she feels really awful because she was made to understand after death what led up to the murders, and she feels guilty for being too afraid of Jose to leave when he first started torturing the boys because he thought they were too soft. So she feels horrible about Jose sexually molesting them, and she doesn't blame them for what they did. She blames Jose for being evil. She blames herself for being a victim of spousal abuse that mentally affected her boys. Nobody came out of this a winner. Jose Menendez destroyed his family and should have been the one behind bars had those boys knew how to properly handle it. If you or anyone you know is being abused, please reach out for help because the law will be on your side. I also want to state that there has been new evidence that may support the Menendez brothers' allegations. There has been a sworn testimony from Roy Rossello. He was a former member of the boy band Menudo who claims he was raped by Jose Menendez, who was then the head of RCA Records in the mid-'80s. At this time, no other young men have ever come forward, but many people believe there might be other victims out there, and if there are, they're hoping they'll contact the police. Roy Rossello said he was only 13 when he met Jose. Rossello referred to Jose as a pedophile. He claims he was given wine and passed out before he later woke up in a New York City hotel room and found himself bleeding. Rossello said he was in terrible pain for a week, that he could barely stand the pain. He said he couldn't even move. And jurors never knew that Jose Menendez raped Rossello. And some of Menendez supporters were saying, well, where was this Roy 30 years ago when the brothers were on trial? But what people don't understand is that some people are so ashamed of being abused that they take that secret to their graves. Here's some information if you feel compelled to sign a petition for the release of Lyle and Erik Menendez. It's on the change.org, and I think I saw one somewhere else too, but I will go ahead and post the information below if you want to get involved. And if not, that's okay too. But I also wanted to end this with, if you or somebody you know is being sexually abused, there is a hotline. It's the Childhelp National Child Abuse Hotline, and it's 1-800-422-4453, and that is a free, confidential, and they are available 24 hours, 7 days a week. And what they do is they provide support, information, and they have resources to help children in need. Because you know what? The law is on your side. And had Erik and Lyle, understood that 35 years ago, they may not have done what they did. I hope this video was insightful and interesting. Have a great day or night. Love and light.